You got this, girl.
Yeah, especially when you fell.
What are you talking about? You mean these minor injuries I sustained?
Holding the entire Ranger up so it didn't fall on you?
Honestly, if it had rolled over top of me, that would have been a better way to end this day. It's been rough. Alright, that's all I guess I need your help with. She does exist, people. She's even got her snow boots on.
Hey, it's my first day of spring break.
Check it out, folks. This Screamin' Red Demon is a 1991 Ford Ranger. It's got the 2.3 liter fire-breathing 4-cylinder under the hood, 5-speed Millennial gearbox, 2-wheel drive. It's the fancy XLT model. Got the custom aluminum rims. Appears to have a pneumatic antenna. Anyway, a local YouTube viewer brought this to me. It cranks, but it will not start. The story I heard is that it belonged to a local body shop. It was their shop truck. That's why it has all the fancy paint and the pinstriping and visor and whatnot. Anyway, they used it for many years, and it developed some kind of electrical problem. Intermittent, I guess. And I think they replaced the computer, maybe. And I see they've added a bunch of extra grounds under the hood. There's some connectors that have been bypassed. So I'm not sure what happened with that. Anyway, at some point they got tired of messing with it. They just parked it out back, and it sat for a number of years. And they were going to scrap it. And this guy came along, and he bought it and kind of saved it from the crusher. Apparently it ran. He drove it like 50 miles or so, and then it just kind of sputtered out and wouldn't restart. So yeah, we're going to do some old school diagnostics. This thing is well into the OBD1 era. Check engine light's not on, but like I said, it will crank, but it won't start. Yeah, I'd say it's a minor case of Ford door. Got the classic 90s Ford red on red interior, which the interior is actually pretty clean for a shop truck. It's like one minor cigar burn over here. Oh, there's a couple computers on the floor, and that's a coil pack, I think. So, like I said, they've had some problems with it in the past, but when this guy bought it, it did run and drive. Whatever happened to it the last time, I think, is independent of the intermittent problem that it had before. 52,593. I'm going to assume that's 152,000 miles. Yeah, pretty clean truck, really. It's like she might be a little crunchy underneath, but you know, 31 years in Illinois, what are you going to do? Yeah, let's get into it. It sounds like somebody put a muffler on the door dinger. Man, I support that idea. All right, let's just see what happens. We're going to listen for the fuel pump first. And I heard it. It should run for a second or two. And it does. That's good. These old Fords are kind of notorious for the inertia switch goofing up, and it'll stop the fuel pump from working. That's interesting. So we got a little backfire, which I think means it might be getting fuel. Sounds like a consistent, even cranking. I don't hear any dead cylinder, anything like that. But it does not even try to start. So, all right, we're going to check for a spark real quick. So I can just crank it here at the starter relay. No spark. Yeah, these 2.4s are kind of weird. One of Ford's great ideas. There's 4 spark plugs on this side, and there's 4 spark plugs on that side. So there's 2 of these 4-pot coil units, one here and there's one buried down below the alternator, below the power steering pump actually. Anyway, let's see if we can figure out why we have no spark. Jeepers, look at this thing. So there's a lot going on here. It's got a solid state module. They call it a DIS module. I believe that stands for distributorless ignition system. It's kind of similar to the old TFI ignition module, but there's no distributor. So it has a separate pickup over here off the crankshaft, I think. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, there's a bunch of tests we can do. The first one we're going to do is check for this switched power. So the module is that guy right there. It's bolted to the front of the intake manifold. And pin 1 should be the switched ignition power. And it's good. This is a bit more detailed diagram. And the box down here at the bottom is the DIS module. So we tested for power here, which comes from the key switch. It was good. It's also good out to each coil. So what I was going to do is use a test light to check the primary side of the coil. So we'll connect from here to here and from here to here with the test light. And when we crank the engine, we should see the test light pulse. That's what turns the coil on and off to create your spark. But check it out. It's grounded all the time, at least on one side. So that's not good. Where's my remote starter switch? There it is. Yeehaw! So it's looking like we have a shorted DIS module. I guess we can check the other inputs, but it's not looking good right now. Guess what, Max? You got the parts man well trained. It's pretty funny. One of the delivery guys is terrified of Max. The other one spoils him. You want to go outside and eat that? Such a weirdo. This is super weird. Same test light setup. I turned the key off and turned it back on. Now both lights are out. And if I crank it, that works correctly until I let off. And now it's stuck low. If I crank it again, it doesn't work until I turn the key off and back on. That's crazy. Why would it do that? I plug the coil back in, turn the key off, and then back on. Let's see if it sparks on the first crank. It doesn't. That's weird. Super, super weird. So why do the test lights work, but the coil doesn't? So that has to be an ignition module, right? I mean, if I turn the key off, well, let me think about this. All right, let's try unplugging it. Oh, maybe. Okay. Well, that won't tell us anything though, will it? Because it could still be shorted to ground and not. It's got to be the ignition module. There's no other way. And I wonder if it has burned up the coil because that driver was staying on all the time. You know, it's kind of like an old points ignition where if you leave the key on, it burns up the coil. I don't know. That's pretty weird. Let's try this again. So it's trying to fire once in a while. I think that's why it stalls out like that. And my wind detector is going off. I know you hate it, pup. All right, back on this Ranger. It's looking like a bad DIS module, but we better check the crank sensor just to be sure. So I'm not that familiar with this system, but if it's like the TFI module, it'll still fire the coil. The module will fire the coil without any of this stuff from the ECM. So I kind of went through and decoded all of their 3-letter acronyms. So the PIP is the Profile Ignition Pickup. The IDM is the Ignition Diagnostic Monitor. Spout is your spark output. DPI is the Dual Plug Inhibit, so it can actually turn off the left side coils when it doesn't need them. And then CID is Cylinder ID. So the crank sensor has, according to service data, has 2 Hall effect sensors, one for the PIP, one for the CID. So that's kind of a interesting caveat with these 2.3s with the dual coil setup. You can't check spark on the left coil because the computer only uses that when it wants to. Anyway, I've got the scope set up, back probed on pin 2 and pin 4 of the DIS module. All right, folks, this looks pretty good. So it appears they are Hall effect sensors. Pretty decent square wave. It's a little choppy here and there. I think we're getting some interference from the secondary ignition. It's still trying to fire the coil sometimes. I don't have a known good waveform for a Ford DIS module, but we do have a little snippet of the waveform here on this diagram, which is pretty handy. So the CID is the top, the PIP is the bottom, and it should be basically be twice the frequency. The PIP should be twice the frequency of the CID, and then the rising part looks like it's pretty close to the middle of the PIP. We're reasonably close, good enough that it should run. Actually, it even shows the trigger wheel for the crank position sensor. It's kind of cool. So it's got 2 90-degree triggers for the PIP and a 180-degree trigger for the CID. And that's basically all that it needs to figure out when to fire the coils and which coil to fire. So this is a wasted spark system, meaning that it fires, well, how do I explain it? There's essentially only 2 coils. It fires cylinder 1 and 4 at the same time and cylinders 2 and 3 at the same time. Even when it's not on a compression stroke, it fires the spark plug. So essentially, from an ignition standpoint, it works like a 2-cylinder engine. And this very simple crank sensor signal is enough for it to figure that out. This wouldn't be enough information for anything with more than 4 cylinders or that was not a wasted spark system. Anyway, enough of that. We need an ignition module. I thought it was going to be that, but I just wanted to be sure. So we'll let this thing restart and we'll order a module. Somebody decided he's not going to school today. Can you say hi?
Hi.
But we got ourselves a new DIS module. We're going to go ahead and get that installed. No, it's not a Motorcraft. It's whatever that is. Nobody had the Motorcraft. I don't want to wait forever. Yes, I'm sure Rock Auto or whoever online has it, but by the time they ship it out, this thing will be done and gone.
So, Dad.
Yeah.
The last time we made three animals, we made giraffe, a zebra, and a lion.
A giraffe, a zebra, and a lion. Is that right? I don't remember.
Wait, no. The giraffe was actually eating the trees.
Giraffe was eating the trees. The zebra was eating the grass.
So now I want to make...
And the lion was eating the zebra. Is that right?
Yeah, that lion was really eating the zebra, and that zebra was really eating that grass.
I remember that. Kind of.
Can we take a break yet?
It literally just started, Joe.
The leaf that falls from the tree.
All right, we'll apply some of this thermal transfer goo. Might be time for a new tube. It's getting a little crusty. Well, most of it's on my fingers, but some of it got on the module. All right, folks, I think we got it. Plug that guy in. Plug that guy in. The connectors are keyed, so you can't get it in backwards. Well, I mean, you can put it in backwards, but you can't connect it. Okay, we need to put the fuse back in for the fuel pump, which goes right there. I love these old Fords with these comically large fuses. Things are pricey if you ever go to buy one. All right, got all our wires and cables and stuff out of the fan. Let's see what she does. Oh, fail. Well, some smart guy left the key on last night, so the battery's dead. Yeehaw. That's not cool. That's not cool at all. No spark. Don't tell me that ignition module's dead already. Sure acts that way. That is weird. So now we lost power to the module here. Yeah, no power. That's weird. I know we had that before. I'm positive. Yeah, I'm sure we checked that. Okay, well, seems to be a separate issue. So I just walked away for a second and it came back on. This is very bizarre. I don't know. That's pretty weird. Very weird. Runs good though. This is pretty weird. It's been running fine for, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. The line here for the coolant overflow was popped off. I was just fixing that and then it died. I wonder if we just have a charging system problem. Yeah, 3 volts on the battery. So. There we go. All right, it's making more sense now. So I let the battery go dead last night, and then I have the jump pack on it. And maybe when we were losing power to the module, it's just because we were losing connection to the jump pack. So let's fire it back up. We'll pull the jump pack back off and see what happens. Yeah, that's the problem. Volts. That's a lot better than chasing down intermittent wiring problems. So I'll put the battery charger on it. We'll charge that up to full whack, and then we'll see what's going on with this alternator. It probably just needs an alternator. It's been sitting for a long time. Maybe the brushes are stuck or something. Well, it seems to run fine. I charged the battery, but it's just not keeping up. Yeah, it's no good. Yeah, it just keeps going down and down and down. All right, guys, that's it. It runs. That's all we were asked to do. It needs an alternator, and it really needs both pigtails for the coils. I'll show you guys here. So the lock tabs are all, where's my light? The lock tabs are broken off both these coil connectors. I mean, they work, but I don't know how much I would trust them. And I've got to rig up a new overflow line for the coolant here. I don't know, must have got some oil on it or something. It's a little squishy. I chopped the end off, but now it's too short. So I'll rig up some new hose for that. The rest of the stuff, I don't know if we're gonna fix that or not. All right, back to the floor jack. That was my favorite thing to play with too when I was a kid.
The good news is I don't think he's strong enough to actually lift you up.
How about when I'm done?
Max, can you go pick up that sponge that you shredded?
All right, folks, we had a couple days of spring. Birds were chirping. Plows were optimistically removed. Today we're back to reality. Anyway, we're gonna see if this little Ford Ranger will start. It should. I mean, we fixed it. I don't know if it's got some crud in the injectors or what the deal is. It starts kind of hard the first time. After that, it restarts no problem.
Yeah, it's basically just doing nothing. All right, let's get it off there.
I have obtained a rebuilt alternator from the local auto electric wizard. He says the old one's bad. which I think we already knew. This truck's old school. It's got a manual tensioner. There we go. Okay. Feels pretty good. I'll go ahead and replace this negative battery terminal. The one that was on it was not so hot. There we go. I also replaced the coolant overflow hose. So we should be all set. That's more like it. All right, folks. I think that's it for the Ranger. It runs, it drives. That's all we were asked to do. I still have a lot of unanswered questions. I even went back and reviewed the footage, and I still can't really figure out what happened. Starting with the alternator. Did that die while it was here? Because the customer drove the truck like 50 miles, I think he said. And if the alternator wasn't working, the battery should have been completely dead. But when we started our diagnosis, the battery was fine. I didn't check the voltage, but it cranked the engine just fine. And I didn't think anything about it. The other question is why we lost spark after we replaced that DIS module. So the battery was dead. I hooked up the jump pack. Cranked it, it started right up, and it ran for a few seconds and then it died. And you can see in the video, the jump pack falls over, and I think maybe the cable pulled off or something like that. That I can understand. But later in the video, if I'm recalling correctly, there's a point where I'm cranking the engine and it cranks just fine, but we still have no power to that DIS module. And that doesn't make any sense at all. So I don't know if there was something going on with that broken ground cable, the terminal, or if I just had a dodgy connection on the jump pack, or if there really is some kind of intermittent wiring problem, you know, with power to that DIS module. I really don't know. Or maybe it just does all kinds of weird screwy stuff when the voltage gets below a certain threshold. It doesn't matter. It seems to start and run fine now. Well, it doesn't start the greatest. I think it has an injector that's leaking down. It's kind of what it acts like. So when you try to start it the first time, it won't go. But if you let the fuel pump prime twice, it fires right up. And then after that, it's fine. That might also explain why it was kind of fuel locking and popping back on us. Anyway, I imagine if he drives it a little bit, some of those problems will go away. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.